Characters are amazing, but you don't have to go to the movies to meet people with superpowers. Superheroes are already among us. We know it's hard to believe, so we've gathered 10 examples to show you that this is true. Do you want to see real-life doubles of the most famous superheroes? Then let's get it on. English Iron Man. Who doesn't want to feel like Tony Stark, or more exactly, like Iron Man? Even if you're not a genius, billionaire, playboy, or philanthropist, it would be amazing to fly super fast in cool armor. For some people, this is just a dream, but Richard Browning from a small English town made his fantasy come true. Just look how confident he looks while flying over the sea. Are those images from Iron Man 4? In fact, this British engineer always wanted to create a real version of the film's famous armor, but his first attempts failed. Richard was only able to rise half a meter off the ground for a few seconds. Tony Stark would have found that very funny. However, the inventor did not give up, even though he had to work on weekends, and his wife begged him to give up his dream. But in the end, the result exceeded all expectations. His exoskeleton with 6 gas turbines can fly for 12 minutes and accelerate up to 450 kilometers per hour. What else can we say? We can only envy Richard, or watch the video and feel the inspiration to create a similar suit. Star-Lord's doppelganger. When you watch a movie about superheroes, it's hard to tell the actor from their character. It seems that all these incredible feats or atrocities are performed by the actor and not the superhero. Chris Hemsworth waving a heavy hammer, Hugh Jackman fighting fearlessly despite his wounds, or Tom Hardy trying to resist the symbiote. But it's time to reveal the truth. Actors who play different superheroes prefer not to perform complex and dangerous tricks, and we can't judge them. An accident would jeopardize the filming, and nobody wants the shooting or the release date of the film to be postponed forever. So the actors receive help from computer graphics or professional stuntmen. For example, this is Chris Pratt, the star of The Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. But who's the guy next to him? His twin brother? Actually, it's stuntman Tony McFarlane. He may not look like Chris, but when they dress alike, it's hard to tell the difference. You probably didn't notice the substitution on the screen, did you? McFarlane did all of Pratt's dirty work in Jurassic World, in both parts of Guardians of the Galaxy, and in the movie Passengers. You shouldn't criticize Star-Lord. In the film industry, only Jackie Chan does all his tricks on his own. Captain America, engineer. One punch and then another. Villains scattered around like bowling pins. Captain America doesn't even have to use his hand-to-hand combat skills. The shield does all the work for him. It's a shame you can't have a weapon like that in real life. Or maybe you can. Canadian engineer James Hobson, better known as the Hacksmith, knows it's possible. He's famous for making copies of gadgets from video games and superhero movies. Among his inventions is Steve Rogers' famous shield. Of course, it isn't made of vibranium and can hardly hit targets with such precision, but it returns to its owner's hand. There are no special effects, just pure science. Hobson wears an electromagnetic bracelet on his forearm, which attracts the shield, and the shield works as well as the original. Watch how easily Hobson breaks concrete blocks and even destroys an armored box. But that's not his entire arsenal. The Hacksmith also has an Iron Man helmet, a huge half-life crossbow, and Reinhardt's rocket hammer. In other words, it's better not to mess with this guy. Iranian Hulk. The same could be said about this giant, however. It is unlikely that there is a person willing to try his strength. You can barely measure his hands with a tape measurer, and the can of Fanta in his hand looks ridiculously small. How does he fit on the screen? This incredibly large man is Sajjad Gharibi. He lives in Iran, trains all the time, and has 479,000 followers on Instagram. The 28-year-old giant is 188 centimeters tall and weighs 155 kilograms, and all of it is muscle. He has a great physique. He participates in weightlifting competitions and has represented his country in bodybuilding tournaments. Take a closer look at his figure. Remind you of anyone? Because of his size, Sajjad is often compared to the Hulk. We don't know if he has been exposed to gamma radiation, but there are definitely similarities, except that Bruce Banner turns into a giant monster when he's angry. you imagine how Gariby would look if you made him angry? Real-life Spider-Man. When you were a kid, you probably tried to get a bewildered spider to bite you in hopes of acquiring the same agility and skill as the famous comic book hero. It may seem silly and fun, but it's a normal behavior among children. Who wouldn't like to jump long distances, climb steep walls, and land on their feet after a few backflips in the air? But there was no need to torture a poor spider. Meet William Spencer, the real Spider-Man. There are two reasons to call him that. Firstly, he was Andrew Garfield's double in the making of the two Spider-Man films. And secondly, he breaks all the laws of gravity. As a child, William was inspired by the example of his older brother, a successful skater, and since then he has not left the board, performing complex tricks. He's also a parkour enthusiast. Look at this. He runs along the wall as if his feet were sticking to the surface. It's only natural that the makers of Spider-Man noticed the guy's talent and invited him to work as a stuntman. And they made the right decision. Real-life Gambit. How can a normal playing card break a candy cane into pieces? Easy, if it has been thrown by Gambit, or his real-life double with the same powers. Rick Smith Jr. from the United States is compared to the mutants of the Marvel Universe for the precise and formidable way he can throw a deck of cards. You don't have a knife nearby to cut vegetables? No problem. You can use the King of Hearts to cut the celery in half. How's that possible? The character from X-Men had superpowers that allowed him to control the energy of objects. Could it be that Rick is also a mutant? Of course not. At least the magician denies being a superhero. Yeah! According to Rick, his agility is the result of long, hard training. Regularly perfecting his tricks allows him not only to surprise the audience, but also to set world records. For example, in 2002, Smith entered the Guinness Book of Records for throwing a card at a huge distance of 66 meters. Imagine that. He also became the most accurate player in the world, throwing 47 out of 52 playing cards into a 25-centimeter diameter container in less than a minute. Thor from Earth. You're probably wondering if there's a person in real life who has the powers of Thor, the god of thunder and lightning. This character has extreme endurance, is able to move islands, and can break a rope made of adamantium. Is there anyone on Earth who looks like him even remotely? We think it's John Call. Maybe he's not the son of Odin, but he is endowed with an incredible physique and therefore can be considered Earth's Thor. This guy looks like a bodybuilder, but he's as flexible as a professional gymnast and performs the craziest acrobatic tricks you've ever seen. Running fast with a heavy load, jumping and doing push-ups in a weighted vest, and then some backflips? No problem. John always comes up with new challenges for his body. By the way, he can also lift a huge hammer. But look at how he does it. While doing a split, the athlete smashes concrete blocks with a 26-kilogram hammer. There's no doubt that if Thor really existed, he'd like what this guy does. Red Skull. We all know there's nothing wrong with trying to be like a superhero. Many of us are inspired by the strength, the dignity, and the courage of the characters in comics and movies. However, sometimes people who want to look like a fictional character can get carried away. Don't you think Henry Rodriguez's transformation is a good example? This 37-year-old man from Venezuela has spent $40,000 and undergone several operations, all to become the Red Skull, an evil villain of the Marvel Universe. He's a pretty weird role model, don't you think? However, the man explains that his choice is simple. He's admired this character since childhood and has always dreamed of having a similar appearance. It took him almost 10 years to create this look. Henry had numerous facial implants and underwent long tattoo sessions. He also has a split tongue and completely black eyes, and even had his nose amputated. However, we must applaud his efforts. The resemblance is truly impressive, but if there is a double of Captain America somewhere on Earth, they shouldn't meet. Lars Hawkeye Anderson. The ancient Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep II could shoot 4 arrows in 2.25 seconds, while the Indian chief Hiawatha could shoot 10 arrows in 8 seconds. Who could compare with them today? Among fictional characters, it would be Hawkeye, a great shooter and the best agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, come on! But in the real world, there's also an archer who can compete with the best of the best. His name is Lars Anderson, and he could very well play Hawkeye without VFX. He's a great athlete, and for many years he was the fastest archer in the world. Lars Anderson was also the first archer to repeat the all-time record of 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds. What's more, he managed to shoot 11 arrows into the air before the first one hit the ground. Can you imagine how good he is? In the film industry, Lars' talent is also highly appreciated, and he's invited as a consultant for TV series and films, including, of course, Robin Hood. And how good is his aim? Because Hawkeye can hit almost any target. Well, look at Anderson shooting the wheels of a car at full speed. Looks like his aim is perfect. Norfolk's Black Widow. We seem to have gotten so caught up in the discussion of superpowers that we have forgotten the main mission of superheroes, to help ordinary people. So it's time to introduce the Black Widow, an alias this guy from Norfolk chose for himself. He wears a homemade spandex suit that makes him look like both Miles Morales and Deadpool.
Oh, hello.
And while this suit doesn't look as impressive as it does in the movies, behind the mask, there's a real superhero. For the past few years, the young man has been patrolling the streets of Hampton Roads. Most of the time, he helps homeless people, provides first aid during emergencies, and fights crime. For example, preventing car thefts. However, in case of more serious confrontations, the Black Widow has special skills. He knows karate and Muay Thai and carries pepper spray and an expandable police baton. Fortunately, he hasn't had to use them yet. As you can see, there are superheroes among us.